Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Came to Believe Open Speaker Meeting. I'd like to open the meeting with a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I meant to let you know, my name is Jamie Burnett. My sobriety birthday is February the 17th, 2015, and I'm a member of this group, the Came to Believe group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are glad to see you're here, especially newcomers. In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask that all who participate confine their discussion to their problems with alcohol. And this is the AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I've asked two home group members to open with how it works in the 12 traditions.
Hi, my name is Lauren Scaring, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March the 6th of 2019. This is how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Hi, I'm Carol Roop, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Carol.
My sobriety date is February 8th, 2020, and I am a member of this group, the Came to Believe group. The AA tradition. To those now in its fold, Alcoholics Anonymous has made the difference between misery and sobriety, and often the difference between life and death. AA can, of course, mean just as much to uncounted alcoholics not yet reached. Therefore, no society of men and women ever had a more urgent need for continuous effectiveness and permanent unity. We alcoholics see that we must work together and hang together, else most of us will finally die alone. The 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous are, we AAs believe, the best answers to our experience has yet given to those ever urgent questions: how can AA be function? And how can AA best stay whole and so survive? And here are the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself to our group conscious. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards on committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thank you, Lawrence and Carol, for opening up our meeting with those readings. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our meeting schedule. We are one group that meets twice a week. We meet right around the corner here in the choir room. This is also where the designated bathroom would be if you need to take a break during the meeting. We meet on Tuesdays. We're a closed meeting from 7 to 8 p.m. On the first, second, and third Tuesday, we read from the Big Book. We read from cover to cover. It takes a little more than 2 years. On the fourth Tuesday, we study the tradition that correlates with that month. And if there happens to be a fifth Tuesday, we do a history reading. On Fridays, we also meet around the corner, and that is from 7 to 8 p.m. It's a closed meeting. We have a closed discussion using AA-approved literature that's chosen by the chairperson. The last Friday of the month, we have the open speaker meeting is what we have tonight. We begin with fellowship at 6:30, and we have a wonderful speaker who comes in, usually from out of town, that begins at 7 o'clock. Closed meetings are for alcoholics or anyone having a desire to stop drinking, and open meetings are for anyone desiring to attend. This is an open meeting, and we're glad you're all here. So at this time, we'd like to introduce the speaker who's going to share his experience, strength, and hope. And I'm going to let Paige do that honor for us. Thanks, Paige.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, kiddo. I'm not going to touch that. My name's Paige Wood. I'm an alcoholic. And my sobriety birth date is March the 31st, 1989. And I am a member of the Came to Believe group here in Rocky Mount. I'd like to welcome everybody. And I'm excited and humbled and pleased to announce the speaker tonight. I've known this guy a long time. I'm going to say probably going on 20 years, although we don't, our paths don't cross all that often. However, recently they have, and so he's been a super support person to me and to the AA community here in Rocky Mount, and has been doing that his whole length of sobriety. So I think we're in for a treat, and I hope that you'll help me welcome Shawn, who is from Rocky Mount. I'm also supposed to tell you, speak into this and adjust it.
You got it. All right. Thank you. All right, everybody hearing me okay? My voice usually carries pretty good, but if you can't hear me at some point, just wave your hand at me. It's no big deal. So I'll see if I can speak up. So I'm not expecting a phone call, but one of my, I'm always scared to death that I'm gonna go over. And so this is my clock, because I have spoken before. There's nothing worse than speaking without a clock. You just go in and have absolutely no clue what time it is. And so that's my clock, to make sure that I'm not the only one standing here at 9 o'clock. So technically I am from out of town. I live in Dorches, but I am from Rocky Mount. Again, my name's Shawn Crumley. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January the 17th, 1996. And I am, what struck me when y'all were reading out of the big book, that section on the traditions, that AA has been the difference between misery and sobriety, or life and death. And that's me. I cannot even imagine. I mean, I can imagine, but it's all bad, where I would be without Alcoholics Anonymous. I have, everything in my life. It starts with AA. If I wasn't sober, everything in my life I owe to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's impossible to put into words, but one of my favorite things about AA is I don't have to, because y'all know what I'm talking about. That's one of the things that struck me when I came back this time. I can remember being in meetings, and it was like y'all put words to my thoughts. And that had never really happened to me before, because I used to think I was the only one that had these thoughts. But I'd be sitting in an AA meeting, and one of y'all would share, and I'd be like, oh man, that's exactly what happened, or that's exactly how it felt. And that was powerful, to be able to identify with another person, because I spent so long just thinking and believing that nobody really understood me, and that nobody had thoughts like I had thoughts, and just nobody dealt with the stuff that I dealt with. And I'm sure that'll come back up tonight, but when I started hearing y'all in AA, it was liberating. It was life-giving to understand and to realize that, man, there are other people like me. And then I started reading this book, and I was like, it blew my mind. It's like, man, somebody wrote a book about me a long time ago. I always wanted to be famous enough where people would want me to write my autobiography. And then I got to A, and I was like, somebody basically already did, because this book is me, inside and out. And so all that to be said, it's good to be in AA meeting. It's always good to be at an AA meeting. And so I thought I'd start out a little bit and tell you all a little bit about today, because again, everything in my life I owe to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I didn't have to work today. I do have a job. That's a gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am employable, and I do good work where I work. But I didn't work today. I woke up in a house. I've been a homeowner for 24 years. I said hey to my wife. I've been married for over 20 years. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. I am, my kids started trickling in. I've got 5 of them. So that's what I say. Between the ages of 4 and 15. So I have a loud house. But I've got to spend time with each one of them today. I'm a dad today. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. I was talking with Lawrence before the meeting, and I just came from my mom's house. And, I was over there. She lives right around the corner. And thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm on good terms with my family, both my parents and my brother. And I could go on and on about all the blessings and the gifts I have from Alcoholics Anonymous. And man, if you look at where my life was, and I'm gonna go to where I was in just a second, and you look at where I'm at, it's just like, man, you're not supposed to be able to get from point A to point B. I think about it sometimes, and it just blows my mind, and it makes me really grateful. And it's Alcoholics Anonymous and God. Thank you. And by the way, and hopefully that'll come through tonight too. It's because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I believe, that I have a relationship with God today. And so, thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had a good day. And again, I could talk about the blessings in my life till my time was up, and all of those, they're a result of being a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you're new, please stick around. I know sometimes we say don't leave before the miracle happens, and don't leave after it happens either, because AA is good stuff. At least it has been for Shawn Crumley. That was today, and so I'm going to go back to last day I took a drink, and that was on January the 17th, 1996. And actually, we'll go back to January 16th, because that's when that day started. But I woke up that morning. I had been kicked out of school. I was supposed to be entering my final semester of college, and the school had decided it was probably not a good idea for me to continue in my studies. And so I was unemployed and just kind of crashing with a friend. I shouldn't say I was unemployed. I did have a job. I was a blood salesman. Some of y'all are blood salesmen too, huh? So for those of you that aren't blood salesmen, that is where you can go and give your blood plasma. And on Franklin Street in 1996, I could get $15 a pop. It's a lot more than that now. And you could do that twice a week. So $30 a week doesn't sound, it might not sound like a ton of money, but at that point in my drinking, I was drinking Richard's Wild Irish Rose, and in 1996, it was 99 cents for one of those little half pints. And so, with $30 you get some stuff done on $30. So that was my life, 1996, I'll get into this, but I relapsed in January of 95, and I drank for just about a year, and that last year was rough. And again, I don't have to go into all the details, because y'all know what it was like at the end of your drinking. Also, it was a really, really dark, bad time. But anyway, I woke up, and I my roommate and I, we thought we were funny. But I'd wake up, we had a little routine. I'd wake up and go to the fridge and grab a beer. And he'd look at me and he'd say, "Crumley, you're such a terrible alcoholic." And I'd laugh, and he was usually curled up on the couch with a 2-foot water bong. And I'd say, "Robbie, you're such a terrible drug addict." And we'd laugh, and that's how we'd start our day. And I had a friend of mine that was coming into town. He had been one of my best friends in elementary school, middle school. We started to drift apart a little bit in high school. He was one of these friends that, man, he was a good friend. But he didn't party like I partied. And it was one of those friendships that I let go. That I picked my drinking over his friendship. And so we started to drift apart. Man, he was a good friend. And he had graduated from college, which was what most kids my age were doing at that point in time. And he had a job, not as a blood salesman, but he was coming into town. And he said, "Hey, I'm in town. It's a couple days before I start my new job. Let's hang out." And so he came out of the house, and I was like, "All right, let's go get a bite to eat." So we went to this place called Linda's Bar and Grill in downtown Chapel Hill, and I had started going there 4 years earlier, and that was my spot. But they also served food, so we went there for lunch. We had lunch, and we stayed till about 4 or 5 o'clock, drinking. And then I think we left. I'm a blackout drinker, but I think we left and ended up back there because at some point we had to eat dinner. So we were back at Linda's for dinner, and Linda's closes at 2, so that's when we left. I think there was a party somewhere, and I think we ended up at the party. You may or may not remember, January 1996, we had a huge snowstorm. There was like 2 feet of snow on the ground in the triangle. And I was driving. I drove a lot drunk. And I was driving this particular night. And this particular night, I made it. I pulled into the parking lot where I stayed, and man, when I pulled in the parking lot, the blue lights came on. Yeah, that's what I said. And I jumped out. I remember I jumped out of the truck, and I was like, "I'm home. I live here. I'm not driving any further." And they don't care. And so I ended up. I called my lawyer. I don't have a lawyer anymore. But I had one back then. A guy that I called to get me out of trouble all the time. So I called him, and he said, "Whatever you do, don't blow." So I figured I hadn't had that much. I've only been drinking since noon. So I blew and got a DWI and ended up back in jail and got out at some ridiculous hour of the morning. It was before daybreak. And I don't know about y'all, but man, sometimes those early morning hours after a long night of drinking and after a really bad event like a DWI or other things that we get into, man, it was just, the world just came kind of crashing in on me. And it wasn't the first time the world had kind of crashed in on me. It had happened before in my drinking. Most of the time I could keep it, I could keep it back. But this particular morning, everything just kind of came crashing in on me again, and I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to live anymore. I'm an alcoholic. I know I'm an alcoholic. I've been to AA before. I've been to treatment several times. I was 22 years old, and I just can't do. I can't do life anymore, and so I had morphine in the house. Doesn't everybody? I had morphine in the house, and I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to take everything we got in the house and just be done. This is it. And I do remember saying a prayer, but it's not a prayer that It's not a normal prayer because my prayer was, and I say it's a prayer because I was talking to God. And that's the reason I call it a prayer. But I blamed God for everything. I blamed God for being an alcoholic. I blamed God that I couldn't stop drinking. I blamed God for things that had happened to me as far back as I could remember. I mean, anything bad in my life that had happened, I blamed God. And I said, God, you GDMFSOB, if you're real, I'm coming to see you. And that's when I took all those pills. And today, as I reflect on my life, I like to think that God said, okay, Shawn, I am real, and you are coming to see me, but not in the place you think. And so obviously, y'all probably figured out by now I didn't die. I woke up in a hospital and there were some nuns praying over me. And I'm not even Catholic, so it was like, man, maybe it did work. But I was in an emergency room and woke up. It was actually at Nash here in Rocky Mountain, hooked up to a bunch of machines. And at some point, somebody asked me if I wanted some help, because the next thing I remember, I was over at Coastal Plains, and there I was again. And that was on January 17th and 18th, 1996. And by the grace of God, I haven't had a drink since then. But I remember being in that treatment center, and I'd been there a couple of days, and I can remember looking in the mirror, and it was like, it was like Groundhog Day. Like, man, here I am again in another one of these places. And obviously, it wasn't the first time. It was like things kept getting worse, but it was like on repeat. It was like, here I am locked up in another hospital. But I started participating, and at that point in time, there was a meeting out at Coastal Plains, an AA meeting, almost every night. So I started going to meetings there in the hospital, and they were taking us out to meetings. And I was getting all these suggestions, I was like a week sober, and it was getting all, like, okay, like you need to get a home group. Like, oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, I'll do that when I get out. And, you need to get a sponsor. And I asked this guy that I had asked before, I said, will you be my sponsor again? He said, we'll talk about it when you get out. I said, okay, I think I'm making some progress there. And I started reading the book, and I was going to meetings. And I remember then they said, and we really think you need to go live somewhere else, like probably in a sober environment. And I was like, whoa, time out. I don't know about all that now. I mean, I'm not that bad. I was doing like 95. I wanted to do like 95% of what y'all were telling me to do. But I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not that bad. I don't know where I get off thinking that I know how to stay sober. I mean, since I started drinking when I was 14 years old, I have put together 3 weeks of sobriety twice in my life. And both of those times started with a hospital stay. So, how I think I know how to stay sober, I have no idea where I'm getting that information. But I think I have a good idea on how to stay sober. And I say, I don't think I need to go live in one of those places. And everybody disagreed, but I was hanging on to it, and I remember I went to a speaker meeting. It was on a Thursday night. It was in the basement of the Catholic Church. Used to have one there. It was my 8th day of sobriety, I believe. And I remember I went to a speaker meeting very similar to this, and I have no idea who the speaker was. Might have been one of y'all for all I know. But he said something that night that a little light bulb went off in my head. And what he said that night was something I've heard 1,000 times since then, but that night was when it clicked. And he said, I never got sober until I was willing to go to any length. And when he said it, I realized, man, if I'm really going to do this thing, I've got to admit that I have absolutely no idea how to stay sober. I mean, I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. And so if I'm really going to try, then I need to do absolutely everything that these people were telling me to do. And so the next day I went back and I said, you know what, if y'all think I need to go live somewhere else, then that's fine, let's do it. And I think that's when I admitted I was powerless. It was like that's when I gave up that one thing I was holding on to, and I was willing to go to any length. I was willing to say, I'm out of answers, I'm out of ideas, I'm absolutely powerless. I cannot manage anything. I'm gonna let y'all run the show. And so I got out a few days later. I remember I got out on my 12th day of sobriety, and I remember I was scared to death. I was scared to death to leave that treatment center. And I was scared to death for two reasons. I was scared because I didn't know if I could stay sober, because, man, I always mess up. I do good for a little while, but it's just a matter of time, and I always mess up. And I know what just happened. I just tried to kill myself, and I was scared. I wasn't going to be able to stay sober. But I think I was just as scared of the idea of being sober, because I had no idea how to live life without drinking. I mean, how do you do life without drinking? How do you have fun? How do you do anything without? I could not picture life without alcohol. It was just really hard to come up with what that was going to look like. It was just so important in my life, and I really didn't think I could do it, because I guess really hard to explain to people that, like, when I'm sober, like, I need a drink. I mean, my mind just kind of takes off sometimes, and I get stressed out, or I get scared, but I'm not going to tell anybody that, but all this is going on in my head. And it's really hard to explain to people, like, man, I need a drink just to, like, get okay for a little bit. But unfortunately I'm an alcoholic, and so I take a drink, and then I can't stop, and off we go again. But that's hard to explain to people, and that's one of the nice things in AA is y'all understand that. Sometimes it's a drink that helps me be okay. But anyway, so I got out, and I got a home group, and I got a sponsor, and I started doing AA. And I was sober. I was probably sober, we're going to say, 2 to 3 months. And I went to a meeting one night. And I remember I walked in. And somebody said to me, I said, Shawn, how are you doing? And I said, I'm doing pretty bad. I'm doing pretty bad. I think I want a drink. And I remember it was Danny S. A lot of y'all know Danny S. And I remember Danny shared with me something I started doing, and he said, Shawn, he said two things. He said, listen, I know this wasn't true because I know Danny, but he said, listen, man, there's some old timers in there talking about you, and they're placing bets, and they're placing wagers on when you're gonna relapse. He said, and I told them I believed in you, but they're in there placing bets. I remember that made me mad. I said, I'll show them. And I know, knowing Danny, I know it was Danny up to his stuff. I know he was doing that because he loved me. But Danny also shared with me that, he said, Shawn, listen, I want you to try something. He said, when you wake up in the morning, I want you to ask God to help you stay sober that day. And if you don't pick up a drink that day, then I want you to thank him when you go to bed at night. So, okay. Plus I want to show those old timers, get them for betting against me. But yeah, I remember that, and that was big, and I'll come back to that, because remember it was a couple of months ago that I'm the guy that just cussed God out. But I started saying that prayer that Danny asked me, and I also remember, this is getting off on timeline, but I remember going to my sponsor one time and saying, man, I don't really want to do this prayer stuff. And he's like, oh, really? I said, yeah, He said, so you're not doing out praying anymore? I said, no, I'm done. And he said, how many meetings are you going to? I said, I don't know. I'm probably going to like 10 or 15 a week. He said, you remember how we opened the meeting? I said, oh, yeah, we say the serenity prayer. You know how we closed the meeting? Yeah, I guess we closed in the Lord's Prayer. And he said, you remember those steps we went through in the book? And yeah, it's like, man, it's like, I say that just to say that with the thing Danny told me and going to meetings, is part of me didn't even want to pray, but y'all had me praying, and I didn't even know I didn't even realize I was praying. I've gone through several phases I went through several phases like that early in my sobriety, that y'all had me doing things that I didn't know I was doing, which was probably good, because I wouldn't have done them if I'd have known I was doing them. And I'm starting to confuse myself, so I'm going to stop going down that line. But anyway. But I remember early on, I decided one Friday night, speaker meeting. It was a Friday night going to an AA meeting. And I remember during the day, early in sobriety, I had a few months of sobriety. And I decided, you know what, this is it, man. I need to go drink. I just need a timeout from AA. That's what I need. I need a timeout. So I'm gonna go out tonight. I'm gonna go to a bar. I'm gonna drink, and I'll just go back to AA tomorrow. I'll just pick up a white chip and go back tomorrow. And I've told myself that lie before. That's one I've told myself so many times. Like, I'll just drink tonight and go back to AA tomorrow. I did that in a previous attempt at AA, and I did it. I drank, and I went to AA the next day, and I picked up a white chip. But then that following day, this is how it goes in my head. It's like, man, I can't believe I relapsed yesterday. I gave up like 3 months of sobriety. I only got a day now. I'll just drink tonight and go back to AA tomorrow. And I'll just start over tomorrow. And that's what I'd do. And I'd play that game for a couple of weeks, and I would be that guy that would come into our meetings. Man, love and tolerance is our code. I would be that guy that would come in crying, saying, AA just doesn't work for me. But I would be playing that game, that I'm just going to drink tonight. I just need that little time out, and I'll pick up a white chip tomorrow. I remember the last time I did that, I did it for like 30 days, and then I just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm just going to drink until I die. And that was the decision I made in 1995. But anyway, so it's a Friday night. I'm like 3 months sober, and I decide, you know what, I'm drinking tonight. I'll just pick up a white chip tomorrow. And then I said, I gotta make coffee tonight. I was like, man, I told those people I'd be the coffee maker, so I guess I'm gonna go to the 8 o'clock meeting. I'm gonna make them their stupid coffee, and then I'm going to drink. And y'all know what happened. I mean, I showed up, and I fulfilled my service commitment. I decided, I guess I'll stick around for the meeting. And after the meeting, I think this group does that a lot. Y'all went out to eat. We went out to eat after the meeting, and then we went to somebody's house after that. And next thing you know, it's like midnight. And I'm like, I still hadn't started drinking. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go home. Just going to go home and go to bed. And that's what I did. But I stayed sober that day. That day, my home group, having a home group, having a service commitment in a home group, that kept me sober that day. Today, I like to think that God used that to keep me sober that day. But that's what kept me sober that day, was making coffee. So I'm also a believer in service work. The next experience I'll share with you happened with me when I was about 1.5 years sober. And I was 1.5 years sober, and I was on a date. This young lady was not an alcoholic. We were at Charlie Goodnight's in downtown Raleigh. And I don't even know if they still do or not. They had a Mexican restaurant back then. This is May 1997. And so I'm on a date, and this is the way alcoholism works for me, but sometimes I have insane thoughts when I'm dead sober. And for me, the most insane thought that Shawn Crumley can have is that a drink is a good idea. But I am almost a year and a half sober. I'm on a date, sitting here talking to this young lady. She orders a drink, and I have this thought. I want a drink. In fact, I want a beer. I'm in a Mexican restaurant. I want a Corona, and I want a lime in it. And then, man, I'm a year and a half, and I'm rocking in AA, man. I'm doing everything. So I'm doing all the stuff that y'all say, like think it all the way through, play the tape all the way through. So I do that, and I think, all right, yeah, I got to drive home. I'll stop at 6. So I'm like, all right, I'll be okay. And so, and of course, I'm trying to have a conversation with this young lady at the same time, and all this stuff's going on in my head, and this is the way my brain works sometimes. But so here I am. So I'm trying to have a conversation. I go take a drink, order a drink, don't order a drink, and all this is going on in my head. And then finally, I was just like, all right, when that waiter comes back, I am ordering a Corona with a lime in it. And then this thought popped in my head. It was something I'd heard in AA. And it was, when all else fails, pray. So, again, this is the guy that cussed God out a year and a half ago. But I had started that, intentionally praying in the morning and at night. And I was going to a lot of AA meetings. And so, in my mind, because I'm still trying to have a social conversation with this poor young lady that has no idea what's going on in my brain. It'll be in my mind, I say a prayer, and I'm like, God, if you can do anything at this point in time, you better kick in right about now, because when that waiter gets here, I'm going to order a Corona with a lime in it. That was my prayer. And about 30 minutes later, I realized that I had not even thought about a drink since I had said that prayer. I mean, it was vanished, gone. And I know that's not everybody's experience, but that was my experience that night. I realized, oh my goodness, I was that close to picking up a drink. And I said a prayer that I didn't think was going to work. And God took that thought, that obsession, He took that away, and it was gone. It was totally gone. And that was a big, big moment in my sobriety. Because it was that night, as I processed what happened, that I realized that not only that God could, but He would if He were sought. Because I thought God could. And I tried. I went through phases. I tried not even to believe in God. But I couldn't even make that work. But I believed God could. But see, God just doesn't do stuff like that for Shawn Crumley. It's kind of like God does God's thing and I do my thing. But that night, that changed. It was right in my face. That was like a burning bush. That was, wow. Wow. God could and would if He were sought. And God and I have been on quite a journey, really since that time. I think it was not long after that I shaved my head. I had really long hair. There it is, Mary. I got that in for you. I had really long hair at that point. I remember one time I just shaved my head bald. I was trying really hard to get spiritual. I tried all kinds of stuff. I had a Volkswagen van, and I lived in a youth hostel in San Francisco for a little while. And man, it was just a crazy time. But I stayed sober, and I did some cool and wacky things there for a couple of years, but I stayed sober. And so the next experience that I always like to get in happened in 2007. It was January 2007. I was coming up on 11 years of sobriety. And my first child had been born, my daughter. She was about 5 months old. And on this particular day, it was a Saturday. It was a big day because remember my wife left town for the day. Like, left this baby girl in my care, like for the first time, like all day, by myself. All right, this is the guy that after 2 days, I strapped in my new daughter the back of my car. I wanted to ride over somebody's house and show them my baby girl, and got that car, put her in her car seat, strapped her in, and the very first curve I took, that car seat just tipped right over. I was like, I forgot to strap the car seat in. So needless to say, people were a little nervous on this particular day, wondering if Shawn can take care of his daughter all by himself. And I remember, like, it wasn't random. People started calling. How's everything going? Then my mom would call. How are you doing? And my mother-in-law called. Anything I can, it was just like, the more people checked in with me, the madder I got. And I started to get a resentment. And I was like, man, they don't even think I can take care of my daughter. And man, by the time my wife got home after dinner that Saturday night, I mean, she walked in the door and said, so how'd it go? And I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to get drunk. So that's where I had gotten to that day. I'm almost 11 years sober. And man, I'm in my mind, I'm doing everything. I go to meetings, I sponsor people, I've got a sponsor. I'm in the book, I'm doing everything. And I walked out that night and I walked into a convenience store right around the corner, walked back to the cooler. I remember I opened it up. And I remember I was like, what in the world am I doing? I mean, what is going on? And I closed it, and at the time I was smoking. I went and got a pack of cigarettes. Thank goodness I hadn't done that in about 13 years. But that night I went in and I got a pack of cigarettes. And then I went to where I knew some of my AA friends were at. And they took one look at me and they said, Shawn, what is wrong with you? And I said, man, I don't know. I'm in a bad spot. But they ended up hanging out with me that night, and I ended up staying sober. But I share that with you because it really messed with me in the head. It's like, man, I was 11 years sober. I'm like doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And I mean, I was that close to relapsing. I was like, what happened? I remember I went and I talked to my sponsor, and I was like, what happened? What happened? He said, I don't know. He said, I'm going to ask my sponsor. So he called his sponsor, and his sponsor said, he's not working one of the steps. I remember my sponsor told me that, and I was like, does he know who he's talking to? I mean, you're going to tell Shawn Crumley he's not doing something right in AA? I mean, come on, man. Come on. I do everything I'm supposed to be doing. That's what my grand sponsor said. He said I'm not doing something. And I got to thinking about that thing. And I started taking an inventory, and it didn't take long after talking it through with my sponsor to realize that I had all but stopped doing step 11. I had all but stopped it. I mean, I was busy at this point in my life. I don't know if I did something wrong, but I mean, I didn't have time to pray anymore. You know, I mean, I got a kid, I got a job. I mean, I'm a busy guy. You know, I was building a business at the time. I mean, I go to plenty of meetings, right? I had stopped doing step 11. And what I have realized, I realized it after going through that, was that what I have is a daily reprieve. And it's contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. I'm going to step away from that if that's all right with y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I have a daily reprieve that is contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And if I I mean, if I don't take care of my spiritual condition, man, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Because I'm the type of alcoholic, like, I don't know when the insane thought's coming. You know, I'm the real alcoholic that it talks about in our book. I don't know when it's coming. It hasn't come in a long time. It might never come the rest of my life. But it might come later tonight. I don't know. And if I'm not on solid spiritual ground, I am liable to take a drink. Because the scariest thing as I reflect on that night is it never even crossed my mind to pray. Never even crossed my mind. And I've prayed to God, I can't even tell you how many times, God, please take this away from me. Please don't let me take a drink. Please take this thought out of my mind. Please take it away. And God has answered that prayer every single time. And that particular night, it didn't even cross my mind to pray. And in retrospect, it didn't cross my mind to pray because I had totally gotten out of the habit of step 11. It just wasn't a part of what I was doing anymore. I was too busy. I mean, it gets down to it. I was too busy. And I made the decision that all that other stuff in my life was more important than my time with God and my relationship with God. And man, I was that close to messing up. And so I make it a priority. I have since then. I make it a priority. Step 11 is really important to me. My relationship with God is the most important thing in my life today. And so I don't know what else I can say about that. Just I know it happens. I've seen it happen to other people. And it almost happened to me, but it was, thank goodness it didn't. I know that. So I am about out of time. Again, I want to thank y'all for having me. And I just want to say again that, and I wish I could tell or wish I could communicate to new people like how much is waiting for you in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like my sponsor used to say to me, Shawn, if you will just not drink, a life beyond your wildest dreams, like that's what's waiting for you. And I would think to myself, that is the stupidest, cheesiest thing I've ever heard in my life. But as I stand here today, I tell you that, man, if you'd have asked me to come up with the best possible scenario, I would have shortchanged myself by so much. All because I didn't take a drink and I just gave my life to Alcoholics Anonymous and God and just kind of let the chips fall where they may. And I decided to try out this program even though I was convinced it wasn't going to work. But so far, so good. So thank y'all for having me tonight.